Thank you. So our goal this evening is to engage in dialogue on the impact of Maryland's blueprint as it relates to pre-K in Montgomery County. We will hear an overview on the Maryland blueprint to ensure that we are working from the same understanding. It will be followed by a presentation by MCPS staff on the planning process. We will then separate into smaller, already assigned breakout rooms, which will be facilitated to gather information and feedback, which will help guide decisions as we begin to implement strategies that strengthen our ECE system in Montgomery County. We'll end the evening with question and answer period, allowing you to ask any questions that you may have about the blueprint, about some of the discussions, and to further engage with each other. During our presentations, you'll note that your microphones have been muted to ensure that there are no distractions. Once you go into your breakout rooms, you'll be unmuted, and during the question and answer at the end, you'll also be unmuted, and you'll be able to control that. I'd like to begin with introductions for tonight's guests. We have Bibi Otero, a special assistant to the county executive, Montgomery County Government. Barbara Andrews, administrator for Early Childhood Services, Department of Health and Human Services. Verna Washington, supervisor of Pre-K Head Start, Montgomery County Public Schools. Amy Kropp, director, Division of Pre-K Special Programs, Montgomery County Public Schools. And Janine Bacquie, our implementation coordinator for the Blueprint of Maryland, Montgomery County Public Schools. So let's go ahead and begin. Ms. Bacquie will lead us with an overview on the Maryland Blueprint. Janine.
Here we go. Good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased to be with you tonight. I'm going to provide you with an overview about the new blueprint law that involves public pre-K, and it's for all counties in the state of Maryland and Montgomery County. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about that. Hopefully, we will be able to answer some of your questions regarding it. And there's also still an opportunity beyond tonight's forum to have your questions answered related to the blueprint. So we're going to talk a little bit about the blueprint, also known as House Bill 1372, and the considerations and implications of public pre-K in Montgomery County. The blueprint for Maryland's future law is a new state-level education reform law that includes pre-K. It was developed from the work of the Kirwan Commission that some of you may have heard of over the last 3 years. Its goal is to enhance and improve state and local investments in school systems and partner programs across Maryland, and to make Maryland high-performing schools that are a world-class system. The blueprint also establishes a new agency. Many of you have heard of the Maryland State Department of Education, but the blueprint law develops a new entity called the Accountability and Implementation Board, or the AIB, that works with MSDE to implement and monitor the new blueprint law goals. So here we go. There are 5 blueprint policy areas in the new law: early care and education expansion, which is what we'll talk about tonight, high quality and diverse teacher leaders, more resources to ensure all students are successful, college and career readiness pathways and CTE, and governance and accountability. The work on the blueprint is a Montgomery County-wide effort. Montgomery County will develop and submit a comprehensive plan to meet the requirements of the new blueprint law. The work of the Department of Health and Human Services, MCPS, state colleges, universities, childcare, business and industry leaders, and others are all reflected in parts of the new blueprint law. The blueprint law includes governance and representation from the county executive's office, the county council, and MCPS. And I am the Montgomery County Blueprint Coordinator, representing all aspects of the county blueprint plan. A process has been developed to gather stakeholder feedback and input that will be used to develop recommendations for the plan. Tonight's forum is a part of that. I'll talk a little bit about what the blueprint law requires. The Blueprint Law calls for an expansion of full-day pre-K across the state. This should happen through what we call a mixed delivery system. Some of the pre-K will be funded in private schools, and some of the pre-K will be funded in private programs in order to meet the needs of parents. The goal of the Blueprint for pre-K is to expand opportunities at no cost for 3 and 4-year-olds from low-income households at 300% of the federal poverty level. By next year, to include an expansion of 3 and 4-year-olds in state-funded pre-K. And then within a few years, by 2024-25, we can consider also including 4-year-olds whose families have slightly higher income and look at a sliding scale process where the parents may pay for some of the care. There is state public funding for both public and community-based pre-K providers who meet rigorous standards of program quality. Some of you may have heard of the Maryland accreditation system, and you may be participating. The accreditation process is required, and that's also a part of the Excels program, which is required to access the state funds for pre-K. The rules concerning the Blueprint Law and the requirements are just focused on state-funded pre-K. So all programs across the county will not have to adhere to these requirements, only the ones that want to access state funds to provide pre-K. The Blueprint Law calls for 30% of state-funded pre-K to happen in community-based programs by 2022-2023 school year, and by 2024-2025, 50% of state-funded pre-K should be happening in private community-based programs. The Maryland State Department of Education offers 2 types of preschool grants: preschool development grants and preschool expansion grants until 2025-2026 that you can apply for. This is the way that private programs, community-based programs, family childcare, center-based childcare, private programs, religious programs can apply for state Blueprint funds through a grants process for the next few years. By 2026, that school year, all public and private programs must increase their requirements for the teacher and the support teacher. By 2026, all public and private programs must include a P3 or pre-K to grade 3 state certified lead teacher and an instructional assistant who has a CDA or an associate's degree. So we're a few years away from meeting that requirement, but that's what the Blueprint calls for under this new law. There are alternative and provisional certificate programs that can be explored with MSDE, and there's a process to evaluate credentials or degrees that have been earned outside of the U.S. Public and private pre-K programs that access the state Blueprint funds must offer a full-day program, and the state considers this 6.5 hours. So that doesn't mean that will be the entire hours of your program, but the state-funded pre-K part will include the 6.5 hours. You may also offer before and after care. Parents may also be getting maybe working parents assistance or another scholarship or subsidy that might cover some of those other hours around the 6.5. But the state pre-K dollars cover the 6.5 hours in the day. Programs are also required to ensure that they're not discriminating and that students are not suspended or removed from the programs. Private programs must have a written agreement in place with MCPS, their local school system, and these are called MOUs, or Memorandum of Understanding. The state-funded pre-K programs and the Blueprint dollars will encourage an inclusion of students with disabilities into these pre-K programs. MSDE will develop a statewide process for ensuring that we're verifying a family's income to make sure that they qualify, because our first target is for 3 and 4-year-olds who are coming from low-income families. Again, that's 300% of the federal poverty level. It's about $79,000 for a family of 4. The Blueprint law also calls for an expansion of family support centers for pre- and postnatal support and duty centers for early childhood education and family support. The Blueprint will fully fund the Infants and Toddlers program to identify needs early and provide and coordinate education and support for children who may be at risk or present with developmental needs from ages birth to 5 and their families. The Blueprint will implement a new school readiness assessment for all students entering kindergarten. We are currently using the kindergarten readiness assessment, but at some point that will go away and a new assessment will be developed for all students entering kindergarten. Some important things for you to remember. Parents will have the option to choose what type of program they want for their children, and it should be accessible and help support their schedule if they are working. Montgomery County encourages you to plan for and to start this process of trying to get ready and take a look at what your program has right now and what might be needed in order to meet the Blueprint requirements. Something is on the screen, one moment. Montgomery County encourages you to plan for or start this process if you are interested but cannot meet with the requirements right now. There is some help and technical assistance from MSDE, and there are local resources. State funds can be joined with working parents assistance or other scholarships to make a full day of pre-K programming so that you can include before and after care in order to meet the needs of your parents. We want to hear your individual feedback as providers. We want to hear from parents, from child care centers, from private schools, from family child care associations, and others to help develop a blueprint plan and to advocate with state officials on your behalf for the support. If there's a lot of interest in participating in the Blueprint funded pre-K, we can form a group or a cohort and start helping you make a plan for future involvement. Just because you may not be meeting the requirements right now doesn't mean that after a period of time you might not be eligible. You can start working on a plan so that you can be able to access the state public pre-K funds under the Blueprint. Okay, are there any questions? I think we're right at 10 minutes.
There we go. Thank you, Janine. Okay. So as I said, we're going to be doing some questions at the end. So if you have burning questions, please drop them in the chat. And we're going to move on now. So thank you, Janine, again. Next, we're going to hear from Verna Washington and Amy Kropp, who are from Montgomery County Public Schools, who will share MCPS goals, expectations, and their plan. Amy, Verna.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll start. Amy, I'll only take about 5 minutes and then you could take over from there. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be able to share some important information with you this evening about MCPS's plans for the expansion of pre-K, high quality pre-K to more income eligible families in Montgomery County. So one of the first things we learn in pre-K is to share, right? So Montgomery County Public Schools cannot possibly provide pre-K programming to all income eligible families. So from the very beginning, we have had a commitment to a mixed delivery system. Some of you may be aware that we have been in a technical partnership with 8 community-based partners since 2015. Those partners have also applied for and received pre-K expansion grant funds. We will apply again for FY23 for the pre-K expansion grant and are encouraging our partners to continue to offer full day pre-K to families up to 300% of the federal poverty level and continue in that partnership with us. We want to be clear that anyone who wishes to either use pre-K expansion grant funds or blueprint funds will enter into a technical partnership family with MCPS. And that family comes with certain benefits that include us providing families who come to register for pre-K or go to our website to get information about registering for pre-K, information about all community-based programs that are available. We will not actually register children for those programs, but we will definitely guide families and steer families toward community-based programs as a definite choice for high-quality pre-K. And another advantage that community-based programs have, as Janine mentioned, is you can have the opportunity to offer families before and after care, which a lot of families need to start care from 7 and they can't pick up children till 6. We're not able to provide that in the public schools. And that's another benefit. We will extol the benefits of community-based. We can't do it all. And our goal is not to take all the children from the community-based programs. We want to mention that the grant was shared, information from the grant from MSDE was shared earlier this week. They had to pull it back, but later this afternoon, it was released. I can paste the link to the MSDE's website that has information about pre-K expansion grant and blueprint grant applications in the chat. I will do that. I want to make sure I'm hitting everything that we talked about. The technical partnership, just a little bit of detail. We offer support for students with disabilities, talking about giving information and providing guidance to help community-based providers with that information. We also offer shared professional development with community-based programs. Most recently, we invited our community-based partners to send staff to attend letters training. Don't ask me to do the acronym, but it is training on the science of reading, which is very important right now as the pendulum shifts towards helping children understand phonological awareness, which also helps with English language learners. So anything that we focus on with PD in the public schools, we will also offer that to our community-based partners. And that is about it. We are not the big bad public schools that are going to take all the children away. We are all about sharing. So Amy, I'll hand it over to you to give more information about supporting students with disabilities.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see familiar faces from years past in our work together in the early childhood world. Let me start by framing this as nothing in the blueprint law changes or limits our responsibility by federal law through the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, or IDEA, to provide student services to all students, all children with disabilities, as an entitlement, regardless of their income. So the Kerwin, the blueprint law, does not change our obligation to students with disabilities to provide them a free and appropriate education at our expense for those students who are identified with a disability and have either as birth to 3 have an IFSP, an individualized family services program, or when they turn age 3 and have an IEP, an individual education plan. So nothing is limiting that. So our mission remains the same. We have entitlements for the students, but also our mission, this gives us the nice thing about the blueprint law. It really encourages us what we've known we need to do, which is provide services to students in a variety of settings. And this allows us more opportunities to do this, to be able to provide services to students along a continuum. What we know and what hasn't changed, and what you all know here because of what you do every day, is that children learn best from their peers. There are sometimes, you can have the most wonderful teacher or adult in the classroom, and the child is going to learn best from the children sitting next to him. And we know that about children with disabilities. So it is our charge by mission and philosophy, and also by law, to educate and provide services to children in what the law calls the least restrictive environment. which is to the greatest extent possible, students with disabilities are educated alongside their peers without disabilities. And the blueprint, our excitement here is that this will allow an expansion of opportunity for our students to receive services in a variety of settings within the mixed delivery system we've been talking about. So children will continue to go through the infants and toddlers process for evaluation, assessment, and also once they turn age 3 through Child Find, which continues to be funded through MCPS. Again, that's an obligation we have under federal law, and it continues to be our obligation and our charge to evaluate all students whose parents and school personnel believe suspected disability. And the blueprint law allows us what the exciting piece is that this allows us more opportunities as we expand services in Montgomery County to be able to serve students with disabilities in a variety of settings. But I do want to make clear that the blueprint law doesn't change our obligation. It just expands opportunities for us to be able to serve children with disabilities in a broader range of settings.
All right, thank you, Verna and Amy. So for the next portion of the evening, which is really the meat to tonight's event, we would like to hear from you, our childcare community. In our audience today, this evening, we have directors, center staff, and family childcare providers. In a minute, you'll see an alert to proceed to an already assigned breakout room. Each group will have a facilitator who will ask 5 guiding questions to hear your insights and ideas, as well as your concerns. Some groups will have a recorder who will document your responses and ideas. Some groups will only have the facilitator who will be asking the questions, but also documenting. So a little bit of grace and patience as they write down your responses. The ideas and concerns that you generate will help inform decisions for our county as we move forward with the implementation of the state initiative. Please note, not all of our facilitators are experts on this topic. Their role is to provide you time and space to share your insights, concerns, and ideas. So let's see, Emily, if you could go ahead and assign our breakout groups.
Yep, I have them all assigned. I did notice about 5 or 6 participants did not log in with the email that they used. So I'm manually adding you to the session. So if that's the case, it'll just be a couple seconds. Otherwise, everyone else should get their pop-up box and be able to click that and join the session. Jen, how long do you want the sessions for?
Oh, they were going to be for 30 minutes.
30 minutes. All right.
Okay.
Suzanne, are you a director or family child care provider? You can put it in the chat box. Suzanne Borst and Sue Ann Salimbene, Can you put in the chat box if you're a family childcare provider, center provider, and if you would prefer English or Spanish for the breakout rooms? Center provider, English. Thank you, Suanne. And Suzanne. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'll put you in a center. All right, Victoria, I have to go in my breakout room. If for some reason I cannot end the breakout rooms, they should end at 7:20, 7:24.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
welcome. So 7:23, I put the coming back.
Yes, 7:23. Yep, and that's just
Okay.
if for some reason I can't do it from my end. Thank
Okay,
you.
sounds good.
Bye. Oh, what room am I in? 4.
And what about the caller users? We are not allowed to move them.
They can't, I mean, they can't get in if they called in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't assign them to anything.
Okay.
All right.
Mary Louise, you just arrived. Would you please put in the chat box if you work in a center or you are a family childcare provider to assign a group, because everybody's in a groups now, group session. Good afternoon. Helga,
Hi, good afternoon.
you just entered in the meeting.
Actually, I was on the phone and I had to download it and get on the web part of it. But she said she couldn't
Okay.
put me in a subgroup because we called in.
Okay, you work in a center or you have a family center?
A center based.
Okay, let me move to a center. Hold on, please.
Sure, thank you.
Do you prefer Spanish or English?
English, please.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Elga, in your cell phone, there should be a circle with 3 dots. Click there. Okay.
soon.
You are mute.
All right, are we still recording? I think we need to, is it on? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so, okay. Wow, I know the group I was in was still deep in discussion. I don't know how the rest have gone, but I hope that was, I hope everyone was able to delve into the topic. I'm sure there's still a lot of questions that need to be, that are percolating in our brains. So what we'd like to do now is to open up to question and answers. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask from our panelists, any things that maybe were generated through your breakout sessions, we'd love to be able to respond to those now. I did get 3 questions already through the chat. So let me do those first. Between Barbara Andrews and myself, we'll try to answer these or throw them to the appropriate expert. One of the first questions that was posted in the chat button was fully funding infants and toddlers birth through 5, according to previous slide. What is happening to Child Find? So maybe between Mary Manning Falzerano, who is the manager for the infants and toddler program that serves birth to 3, and Amy Kropp, who Child Find is within her purview as well, which serves preschool age children, they can answer. So I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, I was aware that infants and toddlers was going to be funded, but honestly, I have not heard anything about Child Find, so I would defer to Amy on that.
Right. And actually, it says in the blueprint that fully fund infants and toddlers, but we have no idea what that means. So we're kind of waiting on more detail on that. We would enjoy being fully funded. That would be a great thing. Amy, do you want to talk about Child Find?
Yeah, Child Find, it's interesting because Child Find has 2 different meanings. MCPS Child Find is a tiny part of the big law, and the big law is Child Find, which means find, every child birth through age 21 is our obligation. What we all know, because we're in MCPS, we're in Montgomery County and work with MCPS, is that Child Find, we call our little office of, 3 teams Child Find. But really when the blueprint talks about Child Find, it means that all of us have a responsibility to, if we suspect a disability, to pursue that. That being said, our Child Find office, like our teams of 3, is funded through local MCPS dollars, and I don't have any indication that would change or that funding would come specifically directed towards our teams, our MCPS Child Find teams funding. But that will certainly be a discussion that's ongoing as things, as Janine, Bacquie, and I, get deeper in the weeds of this too. So I think more to come on that. So I don't have a specific answer for anybody. Child Find will continue. I mean, there's no indication, we have a Child Find obligation under the law that will continue. It's all currently funded through local MCPS dollars.
Okay. I have 3 more questions, and then I see some hands already up that I'll get to in just a second. So the second question I had is, what's the difference between ELA, ASQ, and the pre-K assessment? So for there's a difference between assessment and screenings. And so really what we're looking at, the ELA and the ASQ, are screening tools on child development in young children, and pre-K assessment would be the ELA and the KRA. So that's the difference there. Then there was a question, can you please go over the staffing educational requirements again? Are these requirements just for schools participating in the grant program? Janine, would you be able to answer what the staffing requirements are for preschool, public pre-K?
Sure, I will. By the time we get to fiscal year 2026, the lead teacher for publicly funded pre-K, whether you're in the public school or you're in a private program, the lead teacher must be pre-K to grade 3 state certified. So you have to have a bachelor's degree and certification in pre-K to grade 3. The supporting teacher or instructional assistant must have a CDA or an associate's degree. That's what's going to be required.
Okay, thank you.
If
All
you
right,
don't have that right now, don't panic. You can still make a plan to get there. We mentioned in our earlier subgroup that there is a person at the state that can help you to evaluate your credentials, to give you some feedback about what you have and what coursework or other things you might need to take in order to meet those requirements. So if you don't have it now, don't count yourself out. Help start making a plan and think about moving towards meeting those requirements. We're trying as hard as we can to get other resources and supports to help you along the way, but I want to encourage you. This is something that will be within your reach.
So I'll just put
And Jen, the other part of the question was just, is it just schools? So it's anyone who accepts funding to be a public pre-K program, whether it's a community-based program or an MCPS program.
Correct. And I would just put a plug in, the Child Care Professional Development Fund does pay for degrees. They are now accepting master's degrees, where in the past was only bachelor's in early childhood. You can now do your master's. Montgomery County Early Care and Education Initiative also funds scholarships to Montgomery College to those who are pursuing their 2 or 4 year degree, their transfer AAS or AAT. And we do pay for, Montgomery College will pay for non-credit classes and ESL classes. So those are different avenues. And I would also suggest that you contact the Child Care Support Services, formerly known as Child Care Resource and Referral Center, for our professional development team will also help you with a professional plan. All right, so then the next one I have here is their written summary of the requirements in the public pre-K online. I will get that link and I'll post it in the chat. I did put the press release. If you scroll up, you'll see that. But let me go to the first person who had their hand up was Emily Ederer. So why don't you ask your question?
Sorry, I put it in the chat. I had the question about the link, and
Okay.
I joined a little bit later, and it's no longer in the chat for me. So when you put that link in, that'll be great. Thank you.
I will do that. Okay. Who else has a question? Having trouble. All right.
I think Nagwa.
Nagwa. Okay, go ahead. Nagwa. Where'd you
Yeah,
go?
so you mentioned that they have to get the qualifications, but will their pay scale go up with the once they earn the degree and have the certification, or how will they get a raise? Is it in the
So,
funding or what?
yes, Janine, you want to answer
So
about
the cost of the teacher and the assistant teacher are part of what is included in the blueprint funding through the grant. So they will pay for the teacher's salary and the assistant teacher's salary that will be written into the grant in order to pay for that. But the blueprint also has another change that is coming about in 2026. And that is for all beginning teachers in the state of Maryland, their salary will start at $60,000. So that means that if you are in a publicly funded pre-K program and you have written a grant or you're applying for those dollars, that lead teacher would also receive that same salary of $60,000.
Right. Anyone else have a question? And Janine, if you're able to find the link for online for the Maryland Blueprint and all its requirements, I am finding it.
MCPS does not have information on its website regarding the blueprint. It doesn't. They do have a series. They have no information on the state's website whatsoever.
Okay.
We're about to launch our on the MCPS website a Montgomery County blueprint, but within the next 2 weeks, there's a meeting that's going to be held with all the public information officers to give some more updated information. So we have a website that's ready to go live, but I'm waiting for some additional information to come in from the state. The state also does, and I can send them to you. They have these technical assistance webinars that they've held, and it has PowerPoints and it outlines each of those requirements. So I can make sure that I send that to you. I don't have those PowerPoints with me right now, but we certainly can get those out to you. And again, I'm going to put my email in the chat. If anyone wants to just email me directly, you can send me messages directly there in any language. It's fine. I'll make sure I get back to you in that language that you speak.
So what we will also do is follow up afterwards with the slide deck. So everyone has a copy of that, as well as I'm dropping again the link for the grant proposal, which will have more information on. Okay, that just went through. So there's the link. All right. Any more questions, Linda Owen?
Hi there. I do have a real quick question for you, Janine. When you are talking about that the salaries of the teacher and the instructional assistant would be paid at the rate that is eventually going to be mandated. That
Teacher one is the
the
teacher.
teacher, the
Teacher one.
So
It
is that
doesn't
being
speak to the paraeducator or the
okay?
support teacher.
And is that being paid by the center or the family child care provider through the money that they receive per pupil? Or are you saying that that they're going to be an MCPS employee that will
No,
be
they will
paid
not
by
be an
MCPS?
MCPS
Okay,
employee. You are running your own individual
okay,
program, but the money that you get through the state grant is what is going to help pay for their salary. At no time do they become an MCPS employee. You just are required to have a technical partnership. Verna calls it a family with MCPS, and they can provide you with additional support. The 8 programs that are in partnership with MCPS participate in professional development with them. They provide other consultations and other types of supports, but they're not a monitor for you. You report directly to the state. They're there as a guide, as a friend, as a peer, and as a support. But you are still operating your own individual program, and this classroom or multiple classrooms are funded through this grant by the state.
Okay, so some of the questions about unionization of teachers and non-unionization of childcare workers doesn't come into play if in fact they're not going to be considered an MCPS employee. Okay,
That's
great.
true to some extent, but there are
Okay.
some family child care providers in
Yes, I'm
Montgomery
sorry, I
County
was
who are
thinking
who are
center.
represented by SEIU
Mhm.
because the Service Employees International Union, because they collect subsidies from the state. So those folks, that's those are they're part of the SEIU bargaining unit.
Mhm.
So those would be individual family child care providers.
Thank you
And
very
at
much.
no time do they become public school employees as a part of MCPS.
Okay, so just for clarification, I've got
Everyone has another question.
Okay, hold on one second. Just for clarification, I do have a couple direct messages here to make sure that everyone understands. There is a per child rate that is through the grant. And there should be, if I'm not mistaken, there is a fixed number of at least 10 children in the program, or 8 if it were in family childcare for the grant to be considered a classroom. So when you're getting that per child amount, that is what's going to help pay for that teacher's salary. So it's not a separate line item of teacher salary plus the per child amount. So I've gotten a couple questions about some confusion for that. Okay, so let me go through hands that are up. I see Liz Sobrino.
Just real quickly, do we know what that per child fee is?
Janine, do you have it off the top of your head? I don't.
I think it's approximately $10,000. It's in that range. If you look at the grants that just came out today, they'll give you a total number for the full amount of the grant. Between now and 2026, this whole process will happen through a grant system where you will apply for a X amount of dollars, and in that, through those funds, you will develop a budget that includes that amount for each child plus your other costs. When we get to FY26, the grants will go away and the state will develop a process to give money directly to the providers, not through a grant process, but it will be approximately $10,000 per student.
Can I follow up? At 10,000 per students with 10 children, that's 100,000. 60,000 is going off to a lead teacher, probably 30,000 to an assistant teacher. It doesn't sound all that profitable when I do a quick, calculation right now. When
The
you factor in
RFP just came
materials
out
and
today. Does
space and
anyone
rent.
know the total amount? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that would answer some of this. The RFPs were just sent out today, and there's a total amount for the whole grant. it includes more than just those two
I
things.
dropped that into the chat box. My computer's acting funny, so I'm trying to open it up right now.
Okay.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Why don't we
Okay,
keep
I'm
going
sorry,
and I'll-
continue. Please go ahead.
Okay.
No,
Any
I'm
other
just,
questions? Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out the how the numbers would potentially work.
Understood.
right.
Okay. Melissa, your hand was up.
Great question.
You're muted, Melissa. Unmute.
Just wondering if there was any way to join with, I don't know, state employees or something in regards to benefits for those staff members who are their salaries actually being paid from the state funds. Because as you know, our industry in general doesn't do very well on the benefits end of things. And it's hard to retain employees.
They're not considered employees of the state. They're considered employees of your program.
Correct.
I think it's going to depend on what your actual costs are within the grant. If you're able to, the grant would allow you to be able to use some of those funds to cover benefits. The question is it enough money to do so? I think
Chances are not.
Right, but you would be allowed to access some of those dollars. And they just issued the grants today. I don't know what that total amount is today. It just came out this afternoon.
23 million. Doesn't sound like it's anywhere near enough.
But each individual grant, it will tell you potentially how much you could get for each individual grant. Has anybody taken a look at that yet today?
I looked at it real quickly. I think it would be really helpful, and we won't have time today, but when we look at the application in terms of the grant program, there's both the enhancement, the pre-K enhancement, and then there's the Maryland pre-K. I would suggest people really look at both of those, and maybe one of the things we might do is go back and really look at them and see if we can do some sort of a training or webinar or something else around this issue, because it is complicated and it is confusing because they're putting out the Maryland pre-K and the enhancement, and as well as the Maryland pre-K program. And I believe the amounts may be different in those two. And so I think you need to look at really carefully which one to apply for based on your own funding and budget. But I believe that the numbers are going to be different.
Okay.
And I'm certainly willing to host another evening session or participate in an evening session where we could maybe walk through that RFP, and I could, be prepared to answer some of these real specific questions. With it just having been posted this afternoon, I haven't had a chance to really wade through it, but I'm happy to do that. And we could talk about potential things that, in terms of a budget and a narrative, and see how it does add up for our folks locally, because that's good data that I can share back to the state if we feel that it does not meet with those requirements. Each of the meetings that I attend, I'm trying to take information back to advocate. So that's a wonderful question, and I'm happy to assist in that process.
Janine, correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes up each year. We're talking about the first year is 10,000. And we all know that 10,000 is not a lot for Montgomery County. So that's certainly a discussion with the state. It's what's in the law at the moment. But it goes up each year, and then it accounts for inflation after that.
And eventually, Verna or Janine, if I'm correct, eventually these two programs will be merged into one. Right now, what you're seeing is pre-K expansion, which is what Verna referred to as the 8 partners who are right now funded under pre-K expansion. And then there's this Maryland pre-K.
Right, pre-K development grants.
Right, and pre-K expansion is going to continue for the next couple of years. So eventually it'll be one, but right now it feels like it's a little bit, it's confusing as to which makes more sense for you to apply to. But ultimately, I believe the supports that Verna talked about apply to both.
They do, that is correct.
And it's been explained to me that once we get through the 2026 school year, it will go away in terms of providing this funding through a grants process, and the money will be directly allocated to the programs. Right now, if you are a provider and you participate through the grant, the money is going straight from the state to you. Does not pass through the school system.
Right.
So let me see. Nagwa has her hand up, and then I see a question I want to get to in the chat. So Nagwa, why don't you ask your question?
Okay, a quick question. Do you have to implement and approve the curriculum?
Yes. Yes.
Which one?
MCPS does not make
If you're gonna
decisions
get
about
a new curriculum, are you gonna be trained on?
MCPS does not, the state does not require providers to use the MCPS curriculum if they're in Montgomery County. They do have to be able to use a curriculum that meets with the state requirements. So if there's a curriculum that you're already using that has been approved by the state, you can continue using those. You don't have to adapt or change. You're still your own independent program. As long as you're meeting with the state requirements, you're okay. You're not under MCPS. They're just going to partner with you and provide you with some professional development and support as a peer in the process, but you still remain as your own independent program.
So
There will be a requirement that you have to have some curriculum in use. The state also has its own pre-K curriculum that could be available for folks to use at no cost.
Yeah, the pre-K curriculum that are approved by MSD are listed on their website. However, keep in mind, some have gone beyond their approval date. So I believe MSD is supposed to be revisiting that. I know for family childcare, one has expired by several years, but they're still accepting the creative curriculum as an approved family childcare curriculum. All right, any other questions in hands? So I also see in the chat box, Janine, what is the relationship of this program to the Child Care Scholarship and WPA?
Well, I will say this, it came up in our other group that the state funding is for a 6.5-hour day. That does not mean that you have to provide just a 6.5-hour day. If you're providing care from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., that's wonderful. And that's usually what most of the parents need who are working. It's just that your program that's funded by the state can't be less than 6.5 hours during the day. So you are free to, someone talked about they have a part-day program and they'd like to add a full-day component, maybe a class that has full day in the wraparound. You certainly have your own model and you develop that. But if you're getting the state funding for pre-K, you have to provide at least 6.5 hours.
Okay.
But then the parent is free to apply for the state scholarship and then the WPA, which we layer one on the other in Montgomery County. So you apply for the state scholarship and then we use WPA to supplement that so that parents can afford the scholarships don't pay for the full cost, as all of you know. But if the parent applies for the scholarship and the WPA, then you have the resources that the parent needs in order to be able to do the extended day and summer. So if you want to have a year-round program, you need an 11-hour day like most childcare does, then you need to layer the funding. It's the state funded for 6.5 hours. It's scholarship and WPA for the other 5 hours or 4.5, whatever that is. And then if you want to stay open the whole summer for those children who are eligible for subsidy, then that's how you would cover the summer. So it really is about learning how to, I always call it braid and blend the dollars. They haven't made it very easy for us, but I think as time goes, we might find that there's hopefully brighter minds will figure out a way to do that at the state level and not have to do it at the program level. But it really is about learning how to blend and braid funding so that you can pay for a full year, full day for families.
Right. So that one child may be attending your program throughout the whole year in the summer, and you're putting those 3 funds together or 2 funds together to pay for that one child's care. So it's kind of looking at how it can wrap around so they can get the most hours of care.
Okay. So our time has come to an end. I want to thank our expert panelists, Bibi Otero, Barbara Andrews, Verna Washington, Amy Kropp, and Janine Bacquie. I also want to thank a big shout out to our breakout room facilitators and recorders. We will follow up this this session with the slide deck and other information links to several topics that we discussed today regarding the expansion grant. I did drop them in the chat, but once you log off, those will disappear, of course, but we will follow up with an email. I want to remind you that we will be continuing this series of forums over the next few months. Our next scheduled forum will be on March 9th, where we will learn more about the early childhood and early care and education coordinating entity that was approved by our county council just last week. Registration will be sent out in the next week or so. As always, please follow us on our social media handles. We have a new name at DHHS CCSS, Department of Health and Human Services, Child Care Support Services. That includes infant and early childhood mental health, health consultation, child care and public space, and the Child Care Resource and Referral Center. Please watch your e-blast for information and news, and I wish you all a very good night. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And once we look at these RFPs for the grants, I'm also available to help people to maybe answer some questions related to those or provide some type of technical support if it's needed. I'm happy to do that in an evening meeting like this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so